Well, VC is a hits-based business, right? It's also a giant Ponzi scheme, meaning where it's kind of like musical chairs. But, VCs are already starting to use analytical tools to make some bets. Again, it's been a craft business where the artistry of both deal flow, finding the right bets, picking the right companies, doubling and tripling down, working with the entrepreneurs, that's been a craft. And probably a good chunk of it will still remain a craft because for now, it's still a people-to-people business. But picking some of those are, I think, going to be automated as well. Um, the bad news for founders, you don't realize that, again, while you see one VC, they have a portfolio of companies. They barely remember your name until you found product market fit, and then they start paying attention. But also, it's a game. I mean, while your interest might be building a product that changes the world, that's not their business model. It's a big idea. Well, they might like you personally, and some of them actually do like their founders. They don't really care at the end of the day. Their business model is to get the greatest return out of a portfolio of companies. And so they're making financial decisions while you might be making, here's, how I want to change the world decisions. And early on, your interests are aligned, but often your interests become unaligned, where the VC wants to optimize the outcome and you want to be around for the next 20 years. So that's something else I remind founders is that your interest and your investors' interest are sometimes not the same. If your only goal is to, change the world, not understanding their only goal is to optimize their return on the investment in your company.
So is it the dark side? Are there any dark side? Having been in Silicon Valley for many years, you have seen the behind the curtain of tech industry hype and also startup work. In your opinion, what is the untold part of the Silicon Valley, as you mentioned about the VC industry, rarely get discussed openly?
Well, one of the things that the business press does terribly badly is they talk all about the CEO. For most companies, at least those who don't have dual use stock, the CEO is just works for the board. They could be hired and fired, in one board meeting, but you never hear about what goes on in the board. You don't even know how many people could name the CEO of Facebook. Okay. How many people could name the board members of Facebook? How many people could name the CEO of Alphabet or Microsoft or OpenAI? How many people could name the board members of those companies? Cricket. And so the secret is not understanding that boards actually have immense power. So in the last couple of decades, at least for the most successful companies, abdicated their adult supervision role in exchange for not being thrown off the board and not being able to invest in the next round. So the dirty secret is that for a good number of unicorns, the board, there is no adult supervision or fiduciary responsibility from anybody. And that's not been healthy. It's been good for financial returns. I don't think it's been healthy for the culture of startups. I think they've become a lot more toxic. So for example, social media, for me, I remind my students joining Facebook once we understood and other social media companies, it's like joining Purdue Pharma once you understood the bad effects of OxyContin and like how it was destroying people as a drug. Social media has become a destructive drug, yet there really isn't. People don't trash the company or the board in the way they should. It's not a healthy thing for society. And more importantly, or there was a startup out of Stanford called Juul that made vaping, popular for teenagers. And people celebrated its financial success while it was destroying the health and addicting, millions and tens of millions of students. The people at Tiger Global should have been on the Interpol's 10 most wanted list. But in fact, because it was a great return to the investors, the Silicon Valley investors have and other investors have kind of lost any moral center of what they'll invest in. And I don't think that's been healthy in the 21st century.
It's very important comments, by the way. So startup accelerators have been very popular. Beyond seed funding, what core values do you structure programs provide founders today? And are they still as relevant given how much startup knowledge is now freely available online?
I think that's a great point. I mean, when I was an entrepreneur, the amount of knowledge you could gather was limited by your coffee bandwidth, meaning could you have coffee and to your proximity physically to Silicon Valley and more importantly, Sand Hill Road. Would anybody have coffee with you that has some pattern recognition about, how do you build a startup, et cetera, where in fact, most people like I did were inventing it by yourself with maybe a couple of comments from others. Your point about entrepreneurship is everywhere and entrepreneurship is available. Advice is available everywhere is just a 21st century phenomenon, which is wonderful. The thing that's That's missing. And I'll go back to the conversation we had earlier about founders are closer to artists. Imagine trying to learn how to paint or compose music if all you were doing was reading about it in a book, right? Now I've just made the case for some hands-on in an accelerator and incubator. You actually want to get to practice, not just read theory. That is, to me, a full, education for a founder would be both theory and practice. Again, just like an artist. If you think you could learn how to paint by reading, then congratulations, you could read all you want on the web and go do a startup. If you think you might want to take a painting class and learn how to do that, then you might want to join an incubator and accelerator. The thing where the analogy breaks down is the other thing for great incubators and accelerators is the network that you will encounter of people who are potential employees, co-founders, customers, funders, etc. That's invaluable. And I would rate the incubator and accelerator not only on practical hands-on experience, do they give you coaching, did they allow you to try things, but how big and how effective is their network?
You retired decades ago. And already very successful and career. What you continue teaching, writing, advising startups rather than relaxing? What motivates you to keep working so tirelessly rather than play golf or take it easy?
Well, I think this is taking it easy. Being retired means, following your passion to wherever you want. While the students see, a class, I see a whole new set of things I learn every quarter. As my students, I teach at Stanford now in both the engineering school and the international policy side for national security, are teaching me things every day. So if you like to do continual learning rather than stop learning, I mean, some people retire and it's just fine and they work in their garden or, as you say, play golf or go sailing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, retirement was doing what I wanted, which was learning, continual learning. Or I just kind of think that the neurons are going to start dying and I need to replace them at a never increasing rate. And also I always have a couple new ideas of, what if or how come or whatever. And the world isn't static. So science advances, technology advances, politics, has become, as you know, in Europe, Ukraine and Russia and the United States with China. I mean, there are all these things going on. And the question is, do you want to be engaged or you want to just retire? As I said, this to me is the best retirement I could imagine.
Are you writing the next book based on your blog posts? I mean, will it be about history of Silicon Valley?
I think I'm done writing books, though. I've said that a couple of times. Right now I teach. I'm an advisor to some parts of the U.S. government on innovation, which, you think corporate innovation is hard. Innovation inside of government agencies, whether it's the United States or Turkey or anywhere else in the world, is probably, harder than corporate innovation, which is harder than startup innovation. The things we did for startups and the tools we built look like toys compared to what you need to do in government agencies, not because people are dumber or whatever, but there are a lot more processes and restrictions. Think about it. In a startup, you could do anything. I mean, anything. In a company, you could do anything your general counsel, lawyer tells you you can't do, or can do. But in a government agency, you can only do the things that you're authorized by law. And so there's a decreasing freedom of motion, freedom of activity as you go from startup to corporation to government agency. And learning how to operate in those environments, I think, are some of the toughest problems. So I tend to be attracted to some of the toughest problems to solve. Not that I think I'm going to solve them, but because I'm, as I said, curious. I think I might want to take a shot at it.